a friend from another country who worked for our same English school kind of in my face one night, and after a business meeting, we were out. She was definitely under the influence, and she got in my face and like really let me have it, saying, "Look, I love you. You're my friend." She goes, "I can't not tell you this, but like it's embarrassing to be with you." And it's funny. Like it took her getting drunk to say what she felt, and probably other people felt.
Yes, dude, I had a experience not with a drunk person, but with a sixth grader. I was a substitute teacher in 2003 in the fall, and I remember subbing that day in an English class, and I was writing the lesson on the board, and I can remember it. I'm writing on the board, and right back there, I hear this boy's voice to this day. He went, "Man, Mr. Ford, you're really fat."
Wow.
And of course, the whole room starts like laughing their heads off, and I laugh to keep from crying. Dark, when you heard that from your friend in their drunken state, where you're like, "Wow, that's what they really think."
Yeah, I mean, it hurt really badly. And I'm like, "No, I get you, blah, blah, whatever." But then, like the next morning, I had to go back to Osaka to take the train, the bullet train back. And I was thinking about it, and then that was like Friday night.
Yes.
And starting Sunday, I started making changes.
Right.
And so basically, almost a whole week went by, and on Friday, it's almost a week after that incident, I called her up at her office in Tokyo, and I said, I won't use her name, but we'll call her Becky, but because that's not even close to her name. I said, "Becky," and you could tell like she was afraid to talk to me, because I think she kind of remembered what she did. And I said, I have something I need to say to you, and I want you just to shut up and listen. And she's like, "Okay." And then I said, "It really hurt a lot what you said, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. And since that time, I've made these changes in how I'm eating, when I'm eating, and what I'm eating, and I've already lost 12 pounds. Like in a week, I lost 12. But when you're 407,
oh yeah,
you can drop. If you really go hardcore, you can drop weight fast.
It was 15 for me in the first week.
Right. So and then I kept with that, and in like the 5 or 6 months before I returned to the United States permanently, I had lost 80 pounds.
Real Good Foods is one of the fastest growing frozen food companies in the U.S. Everything they make is nutrient dense, high in protein, low in carbs, and made from real food ingredients. They make food for every occasion: breakfast sandwiches, poppers, enchiladas, entrees, and pizza. So whether you're on a keto diet, trying to cut back on your carbs, or just trying to eat healthier, they make super convenient and tasty options. RealGoodFoods.com and at Real Good Foods on social media.
Okay, so pause there a second, because here you had this very crass, in-your-face realization of the problem. Here's the thing. People think, why don't fat people know that they're fat? Guess what? They do.
They do.
We do. We know. We don't need you to shout it from the mountaintops. I guess sometimes, and in this case, when it came out of a friend's mouth, it shakes you a bit. And when it came out of a grader's mouth, that what was ironic was the kid's like a little chubby little sixth grader and calling me fat. But anyway, that's another story.
Right.
It was something that shook you awake, but not recommended. I mean, are you of the opinion that being crass and in people's face is the way to go, or is there a loving approach, or is there something halfway between those two that will reach people?
As the Japanese would say, case by case.
Yeah.
Which does not help. I mean, that description doesn't help, but
think about a narcissist, obese person. They're never going to listen to whatever you have to say, no matter how you say it.
Right.
But if someone is truly already even subconsciously thinking, I need to change, I just don't know what to do, and it sounds like you're in that spot. I was most certainly in that spot, and it became this kind of cascade of, okay, the kid said that. I tried to get on a carnival rock climbing wall. There was a carnival. I couldn't do it. It was a cognitive dissonance of I thought I could. There was no way I could at 410 pounds. And then I got a diet book for Christmas, which was about a low carb diet. So it was a lot of things that kind of led up to me being ready to do this. When you took the bull by the reins right away,
even at that point, it wasn't low carb. It was still the normal eat less, move more.
Right. But the point
type stuff.
You were driven into action to at least pursue something that would help move the scale and get you healthier.
Yes, exactly.
So got back to the U.S.
I got back to the U.S., lived with my mom for a while because she was going through cancer therapy at the time. And then I moved to Chicago to pursue acting and comedy at Second City.
Yeah.
So I studied there for about a year and a half, and then I worked at different odd jobs around the city. But then I started putting weight back on.
Yeah.
Because I had like a crazy, not that I was living this debaucherous life, but it was just like I was running around doing things, and there was lack of structure for me. And I really do better with structure in my eating.
And look, you need not just structure in your eating, but structure in your life. You were still up in the air about what you're doing in your life, where you're going to get gigs and all the things that you were pursuing. So that chaos in life leads to stress, and stress cause it make you come for eat, and even the stress itself can put on pounds.
Right. I mean, like now I know things like the stress results in the release of cortisol, into your body, which drives things that, and that's the thing that I always find amusing is when people are like, if you just eat less, move more, this will fix everything. And I'm like, okay, we all have different genes, and I hate to say that we're all different because I don't think we really are, but there are micro differences. But some people are more prone to store body fat than others. And then
and I have a theory about that, and I've expressed it. I haven't seen any studies on it, but I would love to see it researched. Once you become insulin resistant, which if you get to 400 plus pounds like you and I did, we were heavily insulin resistant. But once you get that, you actually become stress resistant as well. So that the impact of stress is much higher. Like an insulin resistant than when you eat carbohydrate, you have maybe a 10 to 15 times kind of response to those carbohydrate as someone who's more insulin sensitive. I think the same happens with stress. You have a more susceptibility to that impacting your blood sugar, your insulin, and all the other kind of hormones, and it hits you harder.
Yeah, I have no problem, again, like you, I haven't seen a study on that, but I have no problem thinking that is probably what really happens as well.
Yeah.
And along that same line, I think it's the problem that too many people do, or the way they approach it, is that they're like, well, what's this? Again, you're back to the magic pill thing or whatever. What's the one thing I need to do to get fit and thin? And the problem is, like, okay, there may be one thing you can do to start.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to bolt on a second thing and a third thing and a fourth thing. And when you put those all together, it becomes more powerful, and then you can actually achieve a lot more. You can see more sustained results.
If I had to say one thing to start, whatever you do, consistent.
Yes. That's like on that end, I started not quite 3 years ago. So this is like well into my journey, but I kept seeing these things like, winners and successful people get up early. They get up early. They get up early. So I set myself, I'm going to get up before 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah.
I'm now at like day 1062 or something. And I get there and every day I post, a picture of my watch on what time, and since my 100-mile race like 2 weeks ago, it's getting really close to 5 o'clock. So I got to push that back down around again.
Yeah.
But like it's and then my wife said to me a couple weeks ago, she's like, okay, you had this grueling, horrible race.
Yeah.
You're going to sleep in today, right? I'm like, she's like, you can sleep in today. I'm like, yes, I can. I won't, but I can.
So let's get into your low carb journey. When did that come into the picture? You were in Chicago seeking things, gaining weight again. When did you find out about low carb? How did you tell us that story?
Okay, so I would because back on 4 years ago, 4.5, I guess it was the Christmas 2017 was. I mean, this is years. This is still like a couple of years. So even then I went down, then back up. So I mean, quick little aside before that, yes, the whole yo-yo thing. I have lost 100 pounds 5 times.
Yes.
And so people are like, well, you have no willpower. I'm like, and then someone else would say, like, if you lose 100 pounds.
It was 4 for me.
Exactly. And then twice I've lost 170 or more.
Once.
And it doesn't solve, it doesn't mean that it's forever.
No.
And so I think it was in January of 2018, my wife picked up a book, and it's a daisy chain of books. And I'm not saying these are the books that in the order that people should read them, but this is just how it was for me. So the first book, she said, she found a book on Kindle, and she read it and said, like, I really think you need to read this. And because she's my wife, so I'm like, yeah, okay, what, you know. And she's like, no, and she didn't hammer me, but she would casually, and she like left the Kindle around for me. And it was Fitness Confidential by Vinnie Tortorich.
Tortorich, yes.
And then from there, that made me aware of a couple of things. And then from there, I think I read The Obesity Code by Jason Fung.
Yeah.
And then I read this book. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not. It's called The Complete Guide to Fasting.
I've heard of it somewhere.
You've heard of it? Yeah. And my wife this morning was just like, I forgot that's today. And she said, who knew when we were reading all of these books with Jimmy Moore that you would get a chance to talk to him at some point down the road? And she's like, how are you excited? And I'm like, he's just a regular guy. I mean, he just happened to write some really great and really helpful books. And by the way, before I forget, thank you. Because all of your books have been very instrumental and helpful. I have them in audio. I will say the Keto Clarity one, by the end, I wanted to break it because of the
clarity, the ding.
The dings drove me nuts.
My producer that did the ding said, yeah, if you've gotten the audiobook of either Cholesterol or Keto Clarity, there was a part of it in there that I came up with called Moment of Clarity Quotes. And so my producer, God bless him, he that if when we went to Moment of Clarity Quote, Dr. Wilson Davis, he put this loud like ding in there, and I'm like, dude, that's annoying as hell. Even I thought it was annoying.
Yeah, and I mean, I've listened to all of your books. I mean, and like many times. So I mean, when I run or when I was at that stage when I was walking, I would listen to them, and then come back a couple months later and just refresh things.
Yeah.
And you're like, I really hate those days.
Here's what it did. It gave you a bit of adrenaline rush because you hated it. And so then you were able to walk a little faster at that moment.
Yes, exactly. So and then from there, and actually the whole thing, I got into what keto was because my wife said, look, our friend, we'll call her Brenda. I'm going to all the B's today. We'll call her Brenda. So Brenda was doing this a meal replacement system. And I'm like, look, these things don't work. They're unsustainable. They're as expensive as crap. And she said, yeah, but like our friend Brenda has had really good success with it. She goes, I think you just need, she goes, I've seen the fire in your eye before when you're on track, you're making it work. She goes, she goes, if you get started, all you need is that ignition for the booster rocks to take off. And I think you'll take off and go. And when I was reading the documentation, which I think a lot of people who do this meal replacement system don't do, I actually read the books.
Yes.
And they mentioned this weird and freaky thing called ketosis. And like if you follow our meal plans, they'll put you into a light state of ketosis. I'm like, well, I haven't even heard, what the world, is ketosis a real thing? So I started looking that up. And that led to Keto Clarity. That led to Jason Fung. That led to Gary Taubes. Nina Teicholz, and there's just too many people to name. So like in about in the first year and a half, I listened to 200 books.
Wow.
I mean, now that's not just nutrition. That also included like heart rate training and running and fitness. But it was like, and then the fun thing was, like with your book and like Jason Fung's book, you would see the crossovers.
Yes.
They're reinforcing each other.
Yes.
And so that was for me was like, okay, I am on the right track. Like this, and besides, weight was flying off. In my first 6 months, I lost 100 pounds in 6 months exactly.
Yes.
And I've totally kept that off.
It was 100 pounds in 100 days when I was 410 to start.
Wow.
so motivated, Ed. I wanted this
Right.
off my body.